Have you ever wondered what happened to ways of speaking, like when people would say, "Away with thee," or "Thou lovest me not"? Have you thought about reading Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales? Maybe you've thought about reading William Langland's Piers Plowman. Maybe you're an English major and you have to take some kind of medieval course, either some pre-1800 literature survey or a mandatory medieval requirement. Whether you are one of these or none of these, whether you've heard about Middle English before or you've never even heard that phrase and don't know what I'm talking about, I want to give you a compelling case. I want to give you 5 reasons actually why I think you should learn how to read Middle English, even if you're not a professional medievalist like myself. My name is Megan Maldonado. I'm a PhD candidate in English and Comparative Literature at Columbia University. I am writing my dissertation on Middle English romance and sacramental theology, but my teaching and research interests also go beyond that. I certainly love to teach, and I hope to teach you something valuable in this video. With that, here are 5 reasons why I think you should learn how to read Middle English, even if you're not really specializing in it. Reason number 1, it is fun to read aloud. Middle English literature is meant to be read aloud. In fact, much of pre-modern literature is meant to be read aloud, even if you're by yourself. If you've ever heard somebody reciting the opening to the Canterbury Tales, this used to be a requirement for taking that kind of class. If you've ever heard somebody say, "Wan that April with his shure sota," it sounds nice, right? You have the rolling R's, which is not really a thing anymore in modern English. You have some blunt Anglo-Saxon sounds. You have this rich influence of French coming in. And of course you have some Latinate vocabulary. You have all these different sounds distilled into a familiar kind of English, but it's just different enough that it just catches your ear a little bit more. So it's fun to hear and it's fun to say. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2, it gives you a better sense of history to be able to read Middle English. I was just alluding to all those cultural and linguistic influences because really you have to have a sense of all these different linguistic players in order to, I think, better be able to read Middle English. It's not entirely required, but it is helpful. Here's the quick and easy and oversimplified version of what's important to know when regarding Middle English and encountering it. First, you have, let's say, a kind of Celtic and Welsh-ish thing going on in the British Isles. Then you have the Roman Empire come in. You have the Latin influence there. They leave in the 400s, I think 410. Then you have the Anglo-Saxons come in. They bring in their own linguistic influence. They bring in their own lettering system as well. They have some runic lettering that still sticks around even into Middle English. Then you have the Norman conquest, the Norman invasion in 1066 by William the Conqueror. That brings a older French language and influence that comes to bear, not just for speaking in the area, but also for writing. And so that all distills and all percolates, and that becomes eventually Middle English, especially more around the 12th, let's say 12th and early 13th century, when it really starts to hit its stride. And the fun thing is that you get to feel like you're embodying this history. You get to hear the sounds and pronounce them, and it's almost like you're telling a historical narrative as you're hearing all these competing linguistic influences coming together into this one language that you get to learn, you get to pronounce and say aloud and have fun with. Reason number 3, you understand the literature better when you're able to read it in the original language. That kind of sounds like a given. We normally think, well, yeah, if I can read it in the original, I'm going to do so. But I think there's an idea that Middle English is somehow too hard, that the modern English is very sufficient because it's so similar to the Middle English. I'm here to tell you that that's not always the case. Yeah, modern English is fine in a pinch, but really the Middle English is always going to be better. For one, not all works in Middle English are translated into modern English. There are some really excellent pieces, some romances like The Siege of Jerusalem or The Sultan of Babylon that I personally love, I think are great stories. I have not found a modern English equivalent to them. You also have something like Thomas Hoccleve's Learn to Die, which I think sounds very dramatic, and it is. It's excellent work of literature. I think it should be studied a lot more. It's already known, but I think a lot more people could enjoy it if they knew how to read it. You also do get Middle English texts that are either fully translated into modern English or they have glosses, that is, they have kind of mini translations or maybe individual words are given a modern English equivalent. Those are helpful, certainly. The texts I use often just have those as part of the editions, But the glosses can be a little misleading, you know? Sometimes a word can have multiple meanings, and that's part of the richness of the poetry, and yet the person glossing chooses to only put one meaning. It really limits your interpretation of the work. For example, I'm reading right now Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, or rereading it for the zillionth time. There's a section when he's hearing the Green Knight coming in for the second part of the game. I won't spoil it if you haven't read it, but the narrator says, what, 3 times. And what means, especially in the Old English register, it means listen. But there's also the valence of just saying like, what? Like you're hearing a weird noise and you're like, what is that? And so it's glossed in that edition that I have as just saying, what? Exclamation mark. But there's so much more to it. It's both listen and also like, what am I listening to? It's this kind of panic. You don't get that if you are just relying on the modern English simple little like, oh, it means what? You know, you're not getting the fullness and the richness of the literature if you have a very simple version of what it's saying. Reason number 4 to learn to read Middle English is that it enriches your vocabulary. I mean, sure, you're not going to go around speaking Middle English, right? This isn't exactly the same as learning a new language. There are some new elements to it. It's like a very, very, very light version of learning a new language. But if you're already a fluent English speaker, you're just gonna pick up some new stuff, but the new stuff could be really cool. There are some words in Middle English literature that you've maybe even heard before, or maybe not, but they're still kind of around today. Things like betwixt, said betwixt now usually, or dodgerall, kind of, you know, garbage, nonsense. What is this dodgerall? It's actually a word coined by Chaucer in the Canterbury Tales. The host says it to the Chaucer pilgrim. There are fun turns of phrases. There are some new words that you get to learn. You're expanding your mind. So whether you actually use them or not, you are enriching your own native or acquired English speaking experience with this linguistic history that gets to come into play, maybe even in day-to-day conversation. Finally, number 5, it's just really cool. And I think it makes you more attractive knowing how to read and speak aloud Middle English. I haven't always impressed people with it, but I do feel like it is a little bit impressive, you know? I've had people see the books that I read, and if it's in Middle English, there's the crazy spelling. Sometimes you've got the Anglo-Saxon figures coming in where it doesn't even look like it's the same language as English. You know, it's really not terribly hard to learn to read Middle English once you get the hang of it. It does require practice. I won't lie, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not as difficult as acquiring an entirely new language. Yet the payoff, the social payoff, is kind of cool. You know, it's a fun little thing. You get to throw out maybe the first few lines of the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales. You get to show off what you're reading. That's not the only reason to learn a new skill, but I mean, it's a cool hobby and people tend to think that it's kind of impressive. You seem smarter than you maybe are. I mean, it looks like it requires more intelligence than it actually does, I should say. And there you have it. Those are my 5 reasons why I think you should learn Middle English. Maybe only some of them resonate with you, but suffice it to say, I think it is a beautiful version of English. You don't have to be a native English speaker in order to get it. You don't have to learn Latin or Anglo-Saxon or French. Really, as long as you have a good command of English, you're gonna be able to learn this, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content or you're looking forward to the content that I'm going to be making, please like the video, subscribe, share, do all the things that the YouTubers say how to do. I'm obviously new at this, so bear with me on any technical imperfections, but thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to making more videos for you.